And welcome back to the many unanswered questions about Russia's Wagner Group now that its army of mercenaries has apparently ended its revolt against the Russian government. How much support does it really have inside of Russia? And the big question, what's next for its leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who promised to go into exile after building an organization that he thought, anyway, might be able to challenge the Kremlin. Charlie D'Agata has more now on this Russian warlord, homegrown there, Leningrad boy. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. He was a petty thief who eventually came to run a restaurant chain, earning him the nickname of Putin's chef. And yet the past few days, he led an apparent coup attempt in the greatest threat to President Putin's 24-year rule.
Yevgeny Prigozhin rose to prominence on the bloodiest battlefields of Ukraine, rallying his Wagner mercenary group to territorial victories where the regular Russian military fell in defeat, most notably in the fiercest fight of the war so far, Bakhmut. But the 62-year-old's shady criminal career began with a 12-year jail term for robbery and assault. He went on to run a string of restaurants in St. Petersburg, where he befriended Vladimir Putin and got the nickname Putin's chef. Jeff Hahn is a Russian expert at the London School of Economics.
In St. Petersburg in the 90s, where there were open bombings and assassinations, you were not a successful businessman unless you were able to offer protection or buy protection, and he seems to be someone who was offering protection.
From running crime rackets back then to troll farms now, accused of meddling in the U.S. presidential elections. Prigozhin, the FBI's most wanted since 2018. His Wagner Group of mercenaries has established a reputation for brutality, accused of atrocities around the globe, deployed to Syria to fight alongside the forces of President Bashar al-Assad. As reported by CBS's Deborah Patta, providing security for the president of the Central African Republic in exchange for lucrative gold mining contracts.
The Department of Treasury will be designating Wagner as a significant transnational criminal organization.
Things turned sour in Ukraine between Prigozhin and the Russian military elite in the late spring, calling out the Russian defense minister and a top general of starving his forces of ammunition and equipment, costing the lives of thousands. Now, after squaring off against Putin himself, banished to Belarus, what next for Yevgeny Prigozhin?
People keep saying that he's marked for assassination. There's a very good chance. I don't think it might come from the Kremlin. I think it might come from the Ministry of Defense because he embarrassed them hugely. But then again, he's been marked for assassination since the 90s.
So he's not the kind of character to go into hiding, but he's now a warlord forced into early retirement. Another big question is what becomes of the Wagner Group without its leader in regions like Africa and the Middle East. Gayle?
Charlie, everybody always says Vladimir Putin has a very long memory that he never forgets. Don't you think that Prigozhin is always going to have to sleep with one eye open? Doesn't it make sense that he can go to Belarus and everything is, okay, all forgiven?
There may have been some guarantees about his security, and, you know, as our guest has said, this guy has been living with a target on his head since the 90s, so he's used to living with assassination threats and attempts over his head. You have to believe that some sort of deal was brokered that would guarantee his security in Belarus. But again, it may not be the Kremlin, but the generals who come after him, because they're the ones he's been bad-mouthing more than anybody.
Yeah, we shall see. It was an extraordinary weekend. Thank you very much, Charlie D'Agata, reporting from London.